Monbasa, Mvita. Today's topic is multinational conspiracies, and I'm going to feature chemicals. A chemical, by description, is a substance that has a particular composition and molecular formation. There are basically three types of chemicals: organic chemicals, inorganic chemicals, and chemicals that are of mixed structure, both organic and inorganic. Chemicals have been with us for a long time. They have been with humankind for a long time. We've learned to mix different substances to have certain effects: good effects, bad effects, healing effects, therapeutic effects, and even poisoning. When chemicals are being structured, especially those for human use, they are supposed to have a level of poisoning or toxical to a certain point. They are not supposed to exceed certain limits. And in life, in nature, we find we use chemicals in different ways. There are chemicals we use in dyeing clothes. There are chemicals we use in fighting plant pests. There are chemicals we use for beauty. There are chemicals we use for preservation of food. And there are chemicals that we use for destructive purposes. Poison somebody, kill somebody. All these are chemicals. Many of the people are not able to produce a lot of chemicals. So those with money have formed companies. And companies produce chemicals aimed at doing certain things. Most companies produce chemicals that are of benefit to humankind. Chemicals that are supposed to remove pests from our gardens. Chemicals that are supposed to harden clothing materials. Like there are some materials that are produced that are weak. Chemicals that are supposed to dye those clothes. Chemicals that are supposed to produce things like paint. Some chemicals used for healing. Most of the companies that make chemicals make them with the useful or the beneficial effect of human beings in mind. When I talk of this, I want to talk about pesticides. I want to talk about fertilizers. I want to talk about drugs that we use. The companies that make pesticides and chemicals that kill pesticides and pesticides are chemicals that kill pests such as insects that destroy plants. These companies, when they make these chemicals and they are making it, let's say, for human food, the chemicals are made with certain structures that after finishing the job, they are able to break down, or in doses that cannot be accumulative in human beings. They are supposed to be made in such a way that they are only destructive to that pest and not other living things. The international companies, having known this, having studied this, sometimes have ended up with negative findings in their chemical production. For instance, a chemical is not supposed to have a cumulative effect. But on testing the food chain, you find it is having an accumulative effect. What is the best thing to do in such a case? It's good to notify the consumers and withdraw that chemical from the list of chemicals being used, and maybe try another chemical that will not have those effects. Unfortunately, for the companies that make money and have these chemicals in production, instead of following those steps that we've said, they tend to hide the truth, falsify the truth, bribe their way through, and now knowing, because before their testing, they didn't know that these are the effects that this chemical has, a negative effect. So they can be excused in the beginning because they could not understand these things that they have just discovered when they are testing their chemicals. But now, after the discovery of this, they bribe their way, they falsify things, they buy the media, they buy government officials around the world, and they pass these chemicals as being helpful, not harmful. It has had an effect that some companies that produce chemicals have ended up killing fish in rivers, bees and other useful insects. They have caused devastation in nature that will take a very long time to repair. But what happens? When they are confronted, they say, no, our chemicals are safe for use. And what happens? The very organs that are supposed to ensure that the security and the safety of the users is maintained get bribed or knowingly falsify the information. Nature has suffered. People have suffered diseases that have come as a result of those chemicals. And this time people are suffering not because the company does not know. The company knows. The regulatory bodies know. But everybody decides to give a falsifying effect. There was a case in some country where lead was discovered to be poisonous. And the companies bribed left, right, center, everywhere, so that that thing was pacified that way. It had a lot of negative effect on people. Only when one brave scientist came up and stood his ground did that thing stop. As we talk at the moment, countries of the world export food products to countries that are called advanced or first world countries. I guess first means there should be second world. I don't know which ones are the second world countries, but I know of the rest, majority are called third world countries. So the first world, the difference parameter in the second one is not that much noticeable. You don't know which ones are second, but there is a third world countries. So you find these very countries that produce these chemicals give certain regulations to countries that are exporting consumables. And you are told, we should not, when you are exporting food items to us or other items, you should not use chemical A, B, C. Strange enough, in those countries where they are accessing these commodities from, the forbidden chemical is in use, is on the market, and nobody's even talking about its effects. But they don't want the chemical they are selling to the others to use to be used on the things that will be taken to them. That one has happened. We've had another problem with chemicals. There are chemicals that deal with the mind for treatment purposes. They have been put there for treatment purposes. But there are some companies that have gone their way out secretly and tried now using these chemicals in certain doses, in certain trials that impede the human normal functioning. There are cases of mind-controlled drugs that was being tried knowingly by some organs in governments, unknowingly to the people from government and other who these things were being tested on. Some would end up committing suicide. Some would have certain behaviors that are abnormal. And this thing was being done by people who know. Taken the chemical that was supposed to be useful to another level. But not sticking within that realm. There are chemicals that are destructive. The government knows they are destructive. Governments, the world companies know they are destructive. But they have chosen to construct them in a conspiracy manner with organs of governments around the world. Chemicals that were pesticides have been changed to be chemicals that would kill somebody in a very painful manner. They have been weaponized. And nobody's ever told about that. Question is, we human beings, when we pay our budgets, our taxes, that money is taken for defense around the world, do we budget for something that will have to produce chemicals that will kill us in a very painful manner, in a terrible manner, the most terrible manner you can ever imagine? But they are there. And many countries that purport to take care of their citizens and the safety of the world has these chemical weapons at their disposal. We've had everybody running around looking for nuclear. We've forgotten that with the chemicals we have, the multinationals are producing chemicals that are harmful to the animals in the water, that are harmful to the animals on land, and some have been produced purposely for destructive purposes, not of other things, of human beings in warfare. As the countries approach this issue of nuclear, because one thing that I know, what is not good for me should not be good for you either. So those who have the very chemical weapons and are chasing others for other weapons of mass destruction, it's a high time that the world came up and discussed about these things. These are things that we keep quiet about. The world can be wiped out by chemical weapons. And there are some that have a long-lasting effect. For instance, mustard gas, when it is it is exposed to nature, you breathe and you die bleeding from every orifices, every opening in your body. The sweat pores, you are sweating, you are bleeding. You are bleeding from the sweat pores, you are bleeding from the eyes, you are bleeding from the nose, you are bleeding from the mouth, you are bleeding everywhere. That is what we have paid by our taxes for our defense. That is supposed to be our defense. Or to kill the other people from the other side. Or for them to kill you with that chemical. Are you aware that such chemicals exist? And what do these companies do? They put a lid on that one, you can never know. They release chemicals that are not supposed to be used by people. And when they are asked to own up to their irresponsibility, they are covered up. There was a case of some country where when there is oil spillage, then some chemical was supposed to be used to clear the oil spillage. Some countries. And it was realized that these chemicals have got harmful effects. But what do those companies say? No harmful effect. Does its job well. But after that has happened, the effects on the people who have been operating, on the people who are living within these areas, is visible. Some of these chemicals have ended up changing our genetic formation. Not changing our genetic formation because people did not know. You know, there is something that happens when you're using chemicals. You didn't know that's the effect they can have, and now you realize that's the effect the chemicals are having on you. What happens when people know that that is the effect and they keep exposing everybody to those chemicals? It is a high time for the world, because we may only focus our eyes on nuclear, and those who focus their eyes on nuclear have nuclear, and they don't want to spoil their nuclear, but they don't want others to have nuclear. Reason known to them. Because what is not good to be with your neighbor should not be good to be with you. But we've focused our mind and our eyes on that one. How many are thinking of chemical weapons? How many are thinking of chemicals not weaponized, misuse, hurting us on a daily basis? Why should people refuse to use chemicals or feed on food that has been treated with chemicals that they are selling you? Because what is good for you should also be good for them. But you find there are restrictions. For food to be exported, don't use this, don't use this, don't use that. For flowers to be exported, don't use this, don't use this, don't use that. When you use this one, do not pour it in rivers or anywhere where fish and everything live. But then where you are using, when it rains, the water will still drain to those sources. What has the world got to say about this? Because it's a silent problem. We are screaming about nuclear, we are screaming about other things, but these chemicals, once produced by the multinationals, they are easily accessible. They have been accessible to governments, and sometimes some terrorists have access to them, and they are harmful to us. And leave alone that one of terrorists accessing, we buy them from the market, knowing they are products that are going to be useful to us, innocently, knowing that when we get this, we've gotten rid of our problem. Not realizing that we are creating a bigger problem than even the pest itself, than even the herbs that we are using the herbicides on. People of the world, how do we get to a point that things can be sensitive so that what we use, what is used on us, will not be harmful to us? And then our militaries do not have things, because when we talk of defense and those chemical weapons are stocked by our army, we feel very good. Those others will die painfully. But what you don't realize, their armies also stock those weapons, and you will be the victim. So, for the sake of humankind, can there be a way that human beings, human government, can be able to interact with their governments so that the stockpiling of these weapons, even the possession, is outlawed everywhere? Because when you sit pretty thinking that the enemy will be your neighboring country, you are the enemy to that country, so you are the victim too. I call upon the people of the world, I call upon the societies of the world to hold their systems, to hold their companies, to hold their governments accountable for the safety of humankind and animals. Because if you are a Christian, it says human beings were given power to rule over the earth and protect the things on the earth. So the protection should not only stop on us, with us, but it should go also to the animals and the plants that God has given us authority to take care of. As you think of many other things, please hold the governments, the companies, and those people who are being careless with these chemicals to account for the safety of nature, for the safety of Mother Earth. That is my take for now.